For today's lesson, we're going to be talking about the forehand slice. And the forehand slice is typically a defensive shot. You might see players that are really running out to a wide ball and they're struggling to get to the ball and they don't really have time to do a full uniturn and swing and put topspin. They're literally just swinging across their body and just trying to make the ball in play. That's one of the most common uses of the slice, but a lot of players use it just to kind of change up the pace, change up the rhythm, give your opponent a little bit different bounce, give them a different look. So I'll talk a little bit about the technique. We're going to use what's called a hammer grip. So your index knuckle is going to be on the 1 o'clock position, just like you would hammer a nail. Now, a couple key points to the slice. It's not an aggressive type stroke. In other words, you want the stroke to be fairly smooth. You don't want to be very abrupt. You want the racket face to be slightly upwards because you're oftentimes slicing a ball that's low. You want to get the racket strings slightly under the equator of the ball because this is not a low to high swing. It's more of a slightly high to slightly low, but across. So the ball, when it leaves the strings, will actually rotate this way. It's going to be rotating left to right and with a little bit of backspin. So it looks a little bit like this. How I'm swinging down slightly and across, not straight down and not completely flat, but just slightly down. So I take the racket head just slightly above, bring it slightly below. The other thing that I think is important is, and this is true for most tennis strokes, is to have a little bit of wrist extension. So this is extension, this is flexion. We want the wrist to be slightly extended so I can have my contact more in front. If I don't have an extended wrist, then my contact's going to be really too far behind my body. So I want just a slight wrist extension that will put the contact more in front. And it's a little bit of a feel shot because the slice is hit fairly low over the net. We don't want to hit it super high. If we hit it super high, that means our racket strings are facing upwards too much. So it's more of a slight downwards and more of a cross motion. And you just really have to come out and get the feel. And obviously you want the contact over the net just 1 or 2 feet. You don't want to send it too high over the net. So to practice it, you're mainly looking at that trajectory. We want to try to keep the trajectory in a pretty small window with the slice. Unlike topspin, where sometimes you hit topspin, you hit it super high over the net, sometimes you hit it a little bit lower. For slice shots, you want a fairly stable and consistent trajectory, 1 or 2 feet over the net. So that's what you want to do when you come out and practice, is trying to maintain that very consistent trajectory, that same height. Getting crazy bounces off the garage door. You might have to slow it down a little bit until you get comfortable with the feeling. But again, it's just your shoulder joint, pulling your arm across, downward and across the ball. The main thing is just to get out and try to practice it and see if you can, keep that trajectory just slightly above the net.